Walk into any pharmacy and count the hair loss shampoos on the shelf. There are dozens of them. Biotin shampoos, keratin shampoos, thickening shampoos, anti-hair loss shampoos with ingredient lists that go on for 3 lines. Most of them smell like something that cost $40. Most of them do very little because they spend exactly 60 seconds in contact with your scalp before rinsing down the drain, which is approximately 60 seconds less than the time needed to meaningfully affect a hair follicle. Here's what almost none of those products tell you. There's a specific compound that researchers have studied for its ability to penetrate the scalp barrier, reach the follicle directly, interfere with the hormone that shrinks it, and extend the active growth phase of hair. And it's been used safely by billions of people every single morning for centuries. It's caffeine. Not caffeine in a shampoo that washes out in a minute. Caffeine in a standardized topical form that stays in contact with the scalp long enough to actually do something. And in 2017, a randomized multi-center clinical trial published in Skin Pharmacology and Physiology put a 0.2% caffeine-based topical solution head-to-head against 5% minoxidil, the most widely used pharmaceutical treatment for hair loss, in 210 men with androgenetic alopecia over 6 months. The outcome wasn't what most people expected. If you're not subscribed yet, hit the bell. The next video covers the silent vitamin D deficiency that research has now linked to hair loss across multiple forms of alopecia, and why over half of Americans over 50 are already low without knowing it. But first, let's talk about what caffeine actually does inside a hair follicle, because the mechanism is more interesting than most people realize. You already know what caffeine does in your brain. It blocks adenosine receptors, delays fatigue, sharpens focus. What most people don't know is what it does at the cellular level when it reaches a hair follicle. Here's the starting point. The most common form of hair loss, androgenetic alopecia, pattern hair loss, is driven by DHT, the hormone produced when testosterone is converted by an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase. DHT shortens the anagen phase, the active growth phase, of the hair cycle. It gradually miniaturizes the follicle. It's the same mechanism targeted by finasteride and the biological pathway that most serious hair loss research circles back to. Caffeine interferes with this process through 2 distinct mechanisms. The first is direct inhibition of 5-alpha reductase, the enzyme that produces DHT in the first place. Research published in the Journal of Cosmetic Dermatology in 2024 by Samadhi and colleagues documented this pathway, showing caffeine's capacity to reduce the conversion of testosterone into DHT at the follicular level. The second mechanism is more cellular. Caffeine inhibits an enzyme called phosphodiesterase, which normally breaks down cyclic AMP, a signaling molecule that drives cellular energy and metabolic activity. When phosphodiesterase is inhibited, cyclic AMP accumulates inside follicle cells, effectively giving them more energy and signaling capacity. Researchers at the University of Lübeck in Germany, led by Dr. T.W. Fischer, documented this mechanism in a 2007 study published in the International Journal of Dermatology. In that ex vivo research, caffeine at concentrations as low as 0.00000% counteracted the suppression of hair growth caused by testosterone and promoted elongation of the hair shaft. A 2014 follow-up study by the same team, published on PubMed under PMID 24836/50, went further. They found that caffeine extended the anagen phase, stimulated keratinocyte proliferation in the hair matrix, and upregulated IGF-1, a growth factor involved in keeping follicles in their active state, while downregulating TGF-beta2, which typically signals follicles into regression. In plain language, caffeine appears to push follicles towards staying open and active rather than closing down and resting. But lab studies on isolated follicles are one thing. What happens when caffeine is actually applied to people? That's where the 2017 trial becomes relevant. Dr. Rachita Durat and colleagues conducted a randomized, open-label, multi-center non-inferiority study published in Skin Pharmacology and Physiology. PubMed PMID 29055953. They enrolled 210 men with androgenetic alopecia and assigned them to one of 2 groups. One group applied 0.2% caffeine-based topical liquid to the scalp twice daily. The other applied 5% minoxidil solution twice daily. The trial ran for 6 months. The primary outcome measure was the percentage change in the proportion of anagen hairs in active growth, measured by trichogram. At 6 months, the minoxidil group showed a mean improvement in anagen ratio of 11.68%. The caffeine group showed 10.15%. The difference between the two groups was 1.09%. A gap that the statistical analysis confirmed was within the predetermined non-inferiority margin. The study's conclusion: a caffeine-based topical liquid should be considered as not inferior to minoxidil, 5% solution in men with androgenetic alopecia. Now, the honest context. This was an open-label study, meaning neither participants nor investigators were blinded to which treatment they received. It was also associated with the manufacturer of the caffeine product. These are real limitations that the research community has noted. A 2025 systematic review published in the Journal of Drugs in Dermatology by Lai and colleagues, which analyzed 9 studies on caffeine and hair loss covering 684 participants, concluded that topical caffeine consistently demonstrated hair growth or reduced hair loss, but also clearly stated that further large-scale randomized controlled trials with standardized outcome measures are needed. That honest caveat matters. The evidence for caffeine and hair loss is real, consistent, and mechanistically coherent. It is not yet at the level of evidence we have for finasteride or minoxidil, both of which have gone through decades of large-scale, rigorously controlled trials. The appropriate framing is promising and worth taking seriously, not proven beyond doubt. There's one detail that makes the difference between caffeine that works and caffeine that does nothing, and it's the reason most caffeine shampoos fail. Penetration. Research has confirmed that caffeine can penetrate the scalp barrier and reach the hair follicle. But contact time is everything. A shampoo that rinses out in 60 seconds delivers a fraction of the caffeine that a leave-on topical serum or solution would. The studies that showed meaningful results used topical liquids or serums applied directly to the scalp and left in place, not washout products. The 2017 Dormant trial used 2 ml of 0.2% caffeine solution applied twice daily and left on the scalp. That's the delivery method supported by the research. A caffeine shampoo used in the shower for a minute is not the equivalent, and treating them as equivalent is the mistake most people make when they try caffeine, see nothing, and conclude it doesn't work. The practical protocol that aligns with the published evidence looks like this. A leave-on topical caffeine serum or solution. Look for products that specify 0.2% caffeine concentration, applied to the scalp once or twice daily, focused on the areas of thinning and left in place. Massage it in for 2 to 3 minutes. Massage matters because it distributes the solution and stimulates local circulation, which compounds caffeine's own vasodilation effect. Consistent daily use over at least 3 to 6 months is the minimum time frame to evaluate results. The Dormant trial ran for 6 months for a reason. Hair cycle timelines don't compress because we're impatient. One more layer that determines whether any of this matters in a specific situation. Caffeine's mechanism is specifically relevant to DHT-driven androgenetic alopecia. For someone whose hair loss is primarily driven by nutritional deficiency, thyroid dysfunction, stress-induced telogen effluvium, or autoimmune mechanisms, caffeine's DHT blocking and anagen extending properties don't address the root cause. The compound can support follicle environment in general, but it's not a universal solution for every type of thinning. And as with every topical intervention discussed in this series, caffeine is an external approach to a problem that sometimes has an internal root. If deficiencies in iron, zinc, vitamin D, or B12 are the underlying cause, no amount of topical caffeine will overcome that deficit. The external and internal pieces need to work together. The reason caffeine deserves serious attention as a hair loss intervention is not because it's natural. Plenty of natural things don't work. The reason it deserves attention is because it has a documented mechanism. It has been compared head-to-head against the most widely used pharmaceutical hair loss treatment in a published clinical trial. And the results, with appropriate caveats about study design, held up. That's a higher bar of evidence than most of the products currently filling pharmacy shelves. If you've been spending money on anti-hair loss shampoos and wondering why nothing changes, the answer is probably that the product isn't staying on your scalp long enough to reach your follicles. The intervention isn't wrong. The delivery is, drop a comment and let me know. Have you tried topical caffeine before? Did you use a shampoo or a leave-on serum? The difference in approach makes all the difference in outcome, and it's worth talking through in the comments. Everything here is for educational purposes only and does not replace individualized medical advice. Hair loss has multiple causes and deserves proper evaluation. If your thinning is progressing significantly, see a dermatologist before relying solely on any over-the-counter approach. See you in the next one.